So yeah, there's obviously a lot to unpack here because there is the album, or I guess it's an album. It's only 6 tracks, but it's quite extensive. The Mother Tree, and then there's the book, Rhapsody, Threnody. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
In prayer. And I've read both the book and I've listened to the whole record. It seems like the record, obviously, with the title, The Mother Tree, is more about that middle section about your mother and your family. So I guess I'll just start by asking you about how these two projects complement each other and why you chose to kind of focus on that area, because the book is obviously a lot more extensive than the
Yeah.
album.
Yeah. The album, in a way, it came first. I completed the album before I compiled the book, and it was the Chandra, who runs the record label and the printing house, suggested that we do a book, and he was aware that I had poems. And those poems they're taken from, oh God, decades. Like the earliest one goes back to 77,
Oh,
and the
wow.
yeah, and the latest one was written actually as the book was going to press, and I came up with this poem bubbled up called Aftermath, and I thought, oh, I wish that I'd put that in. So I called up Chandra. I said, "Is it possible to make an 11th hour edition?" And he got it in there. But it spans that whole time, all those poems. But the album, as I say, that came first, and that was recorded some time ago. It was recorded during the pandemic. Did that in 2020,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and I had it in mind to make a spoken word album. I've always had odd spoken word with music tracks on the albums, but the idea of a complete album of spoken word with music, that was in my head. And then I wasn't sure if I would multi-track the music myself, which is something I've done in the past, or if I'd bring in other musicians. And I happened to go and see a friend of mine, Nora Keys, play a show in downtown LA. And she was on in the middle of 3 acts. And then I was about to leave, and then this group was setting. And I thought, oh, I'd stick around, finish my little drink, and see what this lot are like. Probably just stay for one song. Anyway, as soon as they started playing, I was riveted because they were so good, and it was all instrumental music. And then halfway through, it occurred to me, oh, this kind of music and these players could really work accompanying the spoken word. And beyond that, maybe we could do some songs, which we did do. We've done a couple of songs as well.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I put this notion to them after their set, and about 3 days later, we're in the studio.
How long did it take you to record the whole album?
Well, there was 2 sessions and that first track was done in one take. So
And it's
it's
like 22 minutes long?
yeah,
Wow. I
yeah,
was going to ask you if you did it in one take because it felt
yeah.
very immediate.
Yes, right. In fact, all of the tracks were done in one take, with me reciting as the musicians played. So we were responding to each other, and it was semi-improvised, And just sent them the poems and really gave them carte blanche to come up with music. And then I didn't even hear the music until just before recording. I didn't want
Oh,
to. I wanted it to be that spontaneous, and then I just got them to play a little bit of it, and I would give them direction. But if I had to do that at all, it was really minimal. Usually, it was like, "Yeah, that's it. Let's do it." I think there was one song, one piece that I got them to slow down a bit, but that's it. And so it's very, very exciting to be in the moment of the
yeah.
creation of the piece, and that being the first time you've really heard the music, and the first time the music has been put together with the recitation.
I'd love to ask you about how it felt to do that first track, the title track, the 22-minute track, because
Hmm.
as your press release says, it's you called this your most personal work to date, and that I've read the poem as well, so I've studied the words. It's about your. Do you mind me asking when did your mother pass? Was it recent or was it?
Oh no, 1997.
Okay. Wow, that's an interesting time in your career as well, because like it was around the time Love and Rockets were putting out a new record. It was kind of around the time that Bauhaus were doing their first reunion, shortly before that.
Yeah.
Interesting time. But yes, that record was, or that song, that track is, I mean this in the best possible way. I mean this is a compliment. I almost felt kind of like bad listening to it or like uncomfortable. Like it
Mm.
felt so personal, like I was
Yeah.
eavesdropping on something.
Right.
So what was it like to, especially when you kind of didn't know how it was going to come out and it was all like one take to do something like that? It must have been very emotional for you.
Yeah, it was highly emotional. And you can hear that in my voice, I think. Um, and I'm glad that we got it in that one take because it would have been very hard to have gone in and had another crack at it,
Hmm.
you know. Um, yeah, but it was also cathartic. The writing of it was cathartic. I mean, I wrote that the day after my mum passed, but it took 3 days to write the main section of that poem. And then I put it aside and then I completed it after I'd received her ashes and then decided what to do with those ashes. And I talk about that in the poem. And that completed it.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize the timing of when you wrote it. So you wrote it in 97 and now we're
Yeah.
28 years later. Was there a timing thing where it felt like this was the time? Like, did you need some distance or what was the timing to do this now as opposed to more, more recently after that happened?
I didn't have any plans for it. I mean, I just wrote it really as catharsis. I didn't think about it. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. It was just the process of writing being necessary for me personally. And never had a plan to put it to music until much later on. So that's why it took that time.
There was something interesting, when I was going over the poem, reading it about your mother being young or being a teenager during World War II
Yeah.
in England and her kind of defiance about what was going on. Obviously, very kind of relevant to certain things that are going on in the world right now. Could you tell me a little bit more about that story, about her childhood growing up during that time?
She grew up in working class family in Birmingham, um, which is in the Midlands. It's sort of North Midlands, and that city was bombed. They bombed the hell out of that city because it's like a big industrial city. It's like known as the second city. So that's where she was brought up, and that's where she was when that was all going down. And she told me that story that I mentioned at the start of the poem about being in the midst of an air raid. Well, she was ice skating. She loved to ice skate. She was a very good skater, apparently. And she was in the rink with her friends, and then the sirens struck up. And so her friends were like, "Oh, let's get the hell out of here, go down to the shelter." And she would do that, but she was 18 at the time. But this time she'd had enough and she refused. It was like sod off Hitler. I'm carrying on. And she was the only one in that rink because everybody fled. And I could just see such a beautiful image and the notion of my mum like skating figure of eight, while in the ice rink when the bombs are falling on the city and just the defiance in that and the spirit of that is very inspirational.
Is there anything that's run through your mind releasing that track with that passage in 2025, given, Nazi sentiment and stuff we see bubbling up, unfortunately, now?
Well, I I take great inspiration from my mum's rebellious, resistance in the face of the Nazis. I mean, obviously that was a lot worse than what we're experiencing. Not to say that what we're experiencing is not bloody awful,
Right.
but it's just yeah, I draw from that in these times. These are very challenging times, and I draw from my mum's heroic spirit of rebellion and resistance and noble resistance and noble rebellion at this time. Yeah. And I would like I like to think that, people could listen to it, hear it, and read it, and be inspired as well. You know.
Absolutely. She sounds like she was a wonderful lady. How did she, besides what you just said, foster creativity in you and in your brother? I mean, she was the mother to two people that started, and many people's opinion, one of like the most influential bands of that time. Did she, how did she foster that in you guys?
Well, way back when I was a kid, like about 7, she was my first audience, and the shows that I would put on were puppet shows, and I made a stage out of a shoebox, and I cut holes in the side, and I had these long gardening sticks, that you use to grow tomatoes. And I'd make these little characters and cut them out and stick them on the end of the sticks. And then they would, enter stage right, enter stage left, and they would have an exchange. It's usually, when I think about it, it was like a kind of like a proto video um, theater, because I play records and I have these characters acting out the songs. One of her
Oh,
records that she loved was Roy Orbison, Pretty Woman. And that was one of the first ones that I did, and I had a pretty woman and I had this guy, and just sort of acted out the song. And she would be sitting there in a Parker Knoll recliner, peeling an orange. She would peel these oranges and bite it and keep the skin in one, and just put them. And she had newspapers on the floor, and she just throw the skins on the floor. Other times she'd have a port and brandy, which was a formidable uh, cocktail. Or she'd be smoking her cigarette, consulate menthol cigarette. But she'd be my audience, and she'd be watching me, and then I'd do my thing, and then she'd applaud, and they would encourage me, and she'd laugh. I'd love making my mum laugh. So
oh.
that was where it all started, really. And then when I got into music, she was quietly supportive. My dad wasn't. My dad was the
Mm.
opposite. So there was a friction there. I mean, he did his best to put me off, and I hated him for that. I really resented that. But later on, in retrospect, I could see that he was being realistic, and just saying, there's thousands and thousands like you, David, what makes you think that you're going to be the one who can do music as a profession? So, yeah, think of something else. Something, no, get a steady job, that whole thing. But that kind of spurred me on in a funny way to like kick in against it.
Did
And yeah,
So I was just gonna ask, the obvious follow-up question was when you went on to have success with Bauhaus, Love and Rockets, and everything else, did he change his tune, so to speak? Was he like, okay, you were right, kid,
no,
No,
no, he would never do that.
but
No.
your mom must have been proud.
My mum was, yeah, she was very supportive and happy about it. No, no, very hard to please, you know. And if he did say begrudgingly give some sort of praise, it would always be followed by some sort of dig. He'd
Mm.
find something to criticize.
My dad's
Or
actually kind of the same way, so I kind of understand.
yeah.
This same dynamic, mother encouraging. I guess that's maybe common. Mother is kind of more nurturing and father's more not, especially if men of a certain generation, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
very
interesting.
true.
So, do you mind me asking what I assume your brother, who obviously you've over the years done many musical things with, has he heard this record or particularly the parts of the book and the record that are about?
No, he hasn't heard it. He's read it. I sent
Oh,
him
okay.
the poem some time ago, and he was very moved by it. But I want to give him the record when it's all done.
And then there's something I'll just ask you about because it is mentioned in this project. You mentioned a phantom older brother, which I took to mean maybe a miscarriage or you would have been the middle child in maybe a different alternate universe. And there are theories about birth order. I'm the oldest of two myself. So I'm curious if, whatever you feel like comfortable speaking about that and why you wanted to mention that
because it
in the
haunted
book.
me. I mean, some my mum told me about this experience she had, and she had pains in her stomach, and went to see the doctor, and he prescribed this medication that she wasn't aware she was pregnant, but it turned out she was, and it caused a miscarriage.
Mm.
Uh, so it's such a haunting idea of, that older brother who could have been. Yeah.
I'm surprised. I mean, how old were you when she told you about that? Obviously, you guys must have been close because some mothers would not share something like that with their children.
She only told me about that when I was in my 30s, after I'd
Oh,
had a kid.
okay. Wow.
I
Wow.
had
That's
my son, Joe.
so obviously like I was saying, this is a very personal work, and I know that your press release, said that's why you are releasing this as not just David J, but with your last name. I did wonder for a minute on a little lighthearted tangent for a second. There's a country guy named David J. I don't know if you know this. You probably do. Because
I'm
every
aware.
time I get a press release of him, I'm like, oh, cool, David J.
I
And then I'm like,
know.
oh, never
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
But
I think there's also a hip hop artist as well.
oh, okay. But I do get press releases for the other one and,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
But
the hip
is
hop guy, he contacted me when he started, and he asked if he could buy my name for $1,000. Yeah.
did you counter offer? Or are you
I,
just like,
I
yeah,
just,
no.
I just walked away.
That's hilarious. I mean, it's almost more insulting that he offered you a pittance as opposed to just saying, like, do you mind if I do this? Like that he offered you, if he was going to offer you, he needed to pony up a little bit more than that. It's pretty funny. But I assume besides, because you were the first David J, what is the other reasoning that's more like personal why you would have the Haskins be part of this project?
Um, it's also, I use that name, my full name, David J. Haskins, for my book, the memoir about Bauhaus, Who Killed Mr. Moonlight. And that really is, it's out of respect for my family, and my dad who had literary leanings. I think he would really, really would have appreciated that, even though he wasn't around when it was published. So it's to do with that. So for literary things, I tend to use the David J. Haskins. I think it looks better as well on the book.
It looks good. It looks good. Um, Also you pay tribute to other people in this project, like, Ian Curtis is one of
Yeah.
them.
Yes.
And I know you knew him, so the reason that I wanted to bring that up is I'm a voter for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I've voted for Joy Division / New Order. I feel they should be nominated separately. They're different bands, whatever. But I voted for Joy Division / New Order twice. They just got passed over a second time, which is baffling to me when I think of the kind of influence they have. And no diss to anyone who did get in this year. They're all worthy. But the thing I have a feeling this does not matter to you. It doesn't matter to a lot of bands I ask about. But Bauhaus has never been nominated. And I don't know if that matters to you. I think it's kind of crazy because like the influence of Bauhaus, of course, can't be, overstated. And in my opinion, kind of invented a genre. Like, does that bother you? Does that matter to you? I mean, there's so many people. Susie and the Banshees aren't in, the Smiths aren't in, the list goes on. But I feel like you guys should be on the ballot.
Yeah. No, it doesn't bother me. Okay.
I feel like it's a thing that bothers fans more because,
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
a few bands that have been passed
Yeah.
over or never nominated who will fess up and say that they'd really like the honor or that they're upset that it hasn't happened. But mo the majority of people seem to side more with your take.
Yeah. No, I don't. It's something I don't think about. I don't know. I don't follow it really.
Do you mind the term goth when I was saying, that you guys kind of were the architects of a genre? There are a lot of artists that kind of eschew when they're given a label, a tag like that. But do you mind
Yeah,
that?
I understand it. I don't mind it as much as I used to.
Oh, okay.
The thing is with that, it's so limiting, you know. With a band like Bauhaus, we were so eclectic and drew from so many different genres and inspirations. And the music, you know, I mean, there's funk in there, there's dub reggae,
Hmm.
there's avant-garde, you know, weirdness. There's yeah, and it's sort of goth. When I think of goth music, it's a bit one-dimensional, you know. I think some of the those goth bands are one-dimensional, others aren't. So it just bothers me in that way that it's a limited term. You know, it's not descriptive of the actual the band.
I do have to say though, I do think it's kind of awesome that my favorite Saturday Night Live recurring sketch of all time, Goth Talk,
Yeah, that
Bela
was
Lugosi's Dead is the theme song. It's always the intro to it.
very
I love
amusing. No, I like that as well. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
I do have to ask, if you don't mind, I'd love to ask about a couple things related specifically to that song. Well, how did that song? Did you have to sign off on that? Did you have to sign off to put Bela Lugosi's Dead
Uh,
on Saturday Night Live?
yes.
But I mean, you were okay with it when it was like goth talk and it was sort of this parody of like
Yeah.
suburban
Well,
goth kids.
yeah. There was always humor to Bauhaus. Yeah.
Hmm.
And yeah, this is very well done, you know. It was funny, you know.
I have interviewed someone who used to be the manager of The Cure in the 90s, or the publicist for The Cure, I should say. And he actually told me that when The Cure were on Saturday Night Live back then, they wanted Robert Smith to guest on like an episode, like be in a goth talk sketch, and he wouldn't do it.
No.
I think it would have been awesome. I think it would have been awesome. Anyway, I digress. But since we're talking to, like, I have two things to ask about that specific song, and one is I think like one of literally the greatest cinematic intros in the history of film is the intro to The Hunger. It is perfect. Do you have any memories of shooting that? I actually don't know how you came to be in the film, strangely.
Well, how we came to be in the film was we did a TV show called Riverside. On that show, we performed Bela Lugosi's Dead. And the director of the Hunger, Mr. Scott, happened to catch that TV show, and he was very struck by it, and he thought, oh, this band could be great in the in the movie in the opening scene. So apparently, story is he called up Bowie, and because he did run everything by as far as the music, he ran it by Bowie, you know, and he said, dude. I've just seen this band. I think they're great. They did the song "Bela Lugosi's Dead." I think it's a great fit for the opening scene of the movie. What do you think? Do you know this band? And apparently he said, yeah, Bauhaus are cool. So
And this was after you had obviously covered Ziggy Stardust, right? Am I doing the timeline right in my brain, or was it before?
it was before.
The Hunger was before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. So he was aware of you otherwise, like not just because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good endorsement to say Bauhaus are cool. I mean, if Bowie
Yeah.
says
And
it.
it was, yeah, it was just such a wonderful experience being on that set with him, you know. And I had an amazing experience with him, personal experience. When they were taking a break, setting up a scene. Now his dressing room, it was filmed in this club called Heaven in London.
I've heard of it, yeah.
And they'd set up a dressing room for him, which was immediately opposite Catherine Deneuve's dressing room, which was like pretty mind blowing for me because I was a big fan of hers, you know. So there was this kind of this it was almost like a vortex of energy being generated between those two rooms, you know. Anyway, we had a little holding area which was immediately adjacent to Bowie's dressing room, and in that area there was an old Wurlitzer style jukebox, and it was stacked with great singles from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So that was there for our entertainment. And while they were setting up the scene, I just found myself there on my own, and I was just looking at the music and deciding to play something, and I felt this presence behind me, which was very strong, really, yeah, it's almost like a tingly feeling of like this presence. And then I hear this very familiar voice pipe up. Do you mind if I pick one? And I turned around, it's Bowie.
Wow.
And I like, oh, please.
I guess.
And then he's looking, he's got his hand on his chin, he's looking. And so I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to pick, you know. And he played Grooving with Mr. Blow by Mr. Blow, which is an instrumental from the 70s, 1970. And then this strikes him, and he just starts dancing in front of me.
Wow.
Just like he's looking at me, and he's just like full on, you know, doing the Bowie moves. And I'm just nodding and just thinking, this is so surreal. And he's like grinning and he's in a very good mood, you know, and he's like looking at me. And then I found that I had this suddenly this hubris, this nervous hubris came upon me, and I got a bit cheeky. And now when Low came out, first time I heard that and I heard the track A New Career in a New Town, I really thought he cribbed a harmonica part from Grooving with Mr. Blow, right? So I said, this reminds me of something. He goes, oh yeah, what? I said, it's one of yours. He goes, oh yeah, what? Which one? I said, it's off a low. He goes, come on, which one? I said, A New Career in a New Town. And with that, he carried on dancing, but he put his finger to his lips and winked, and then
Wow.
just carried on, you know. So that
That's
was,
hilarious.
yeah, it was a magical moment.
Wow. And that's a good Bowie. And when you kind of did the moves, I could kind of
Oh yeah.
I could see the scene. It was a good impression. That's pretty good. Did you cross, I imagine, as your star rose, well, first obviously with Baus, but then, obviously with Love and Rockets, who were, I don't know about in England, but here Love and Rockets were, much, much bigger,
Hmm.
But just in general, with all the things you've done with your career, you guys must have crossed paths again after the Hunger, or
No,
did you not? No.
no, no. A
Wow.
few close calls, but never, no.
Well, if you had only one encounter with David Bowie, I mean, that's a
Yeah,
pretty good
and
one.
what an encounter, you know.
Exactly. The other one thing I wanted to ask you about, it's specific to Bela Lugosi's dead, is I've gone to every Coachella there is except the very first one. And, you know, sorry Daft Punk, sorry Beyonce, those were great moments, but my literal favorite moment ever of Coachella was when you played. In fact, I hope you don't mind me being so silly, but I was so into it that I bought this limited edition t-shirt and it was too big, so I actually had to take it to a tailor to have its own because I needed to have the Coachella. I needed to commemorate that moment, and I think it stands as like kind of like one of for me, the most epic Coachella moment ever. And if you have any stories about that, because that was one for the books.
Well, yeah. See, the whole thing of pizza being upside down it's of course it alludes to bats and vampires and all that, but it was a lot more complex than that in his head. And it was referencing the hanged man in the tarot, and he had all these very esoteric ideas about the significance of that and the state of one's spiritual journey, and where that card, what that card um, signifies, which is it's a state of transition, and it's it's precedes an ascension into a very elevated state, but it's a bit of a spiritual quagmire, and it's sort of a quagmire, putrescence, and degradation. In this is his interpretation, but it just precedes the transition into an elevated state. It's very complex. They had these diagrams in the dressing room, in the rehearsal room, with like notes on it, and it was like a big thing in his head.
Wow.
Aside from that, he would hang upside down literally in a broom closet. He had this contraption set up in there, and he would just be in there for a very long time, just hanging upside down.
Like this was like a pre-show
Yeah,
ritual
to
that,
train for this
wow.
uh performance.
Was that the only time he did that, or was that something he regularly did? Because I only
That was
remember
the only
when,
time.
yeah, I thought so. Wow. Wow. Was there any concern on your part or your bandmate's part? Like, I mean, that could have gone awry in many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, well, it's such a, I mean, a physical feat to sing whilst doing that.
Yeah, and the whole thing. Like I remember thinking that, yeah, I was just probably going to do like maybe a verse or something, and then, and he did am I correct? Is this a fever dream, or did he did the whole song that way, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Like I think
And it's
for,
moving as well as
yeah.
the traction is going across the stage. And also it's pretty damn scary to be suspended, let alone being in front of 50,000 people, but to be upside down, I mean, something could go wrong. You could, fall. And that would be the end of it.
I mean, I'm obviously glad it wasn't, but yeah, I think my heart was, in my throat the entire time, just watching it, going like, don't fall, like, and yeah, like I said, it was epic. I mean, I know I just showed you the shirt, but I mean, I always thought this was great because it's like one of the great logos. But the fact that the shirt was like with the palm trees in front of it, it's like my one of my favorite t-shirts I have. But it was because that moment was so indelible in my mind. So thank you for sharing those stories. I did actually also want to ask you one thing about Love and Rockets because um, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but I remember this so vividly. It had such an impression on me when So Alive went to number 3 in America. I was mentioning how, Love and Rockets were more commercially successful here. That same week, Love Song by The Cure was number 2. And that was the only top 10 song The Cure ever had in America. And I remember looking at the charts and seeing Cure at number 2. I think Whitney Houston or someone like that was number 1. But The Cure were at number 2, Love and Rockets were at number 3. And I was like, we've won. Like alternative rock has won. To see
Yeah.
those two bands that, kind of had always been, for lack of, underground or college rock or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call
yeah,
it.
I get you.
So like when that happened, like were you feeling like that Love and Rockets were part of some kind of sea change? Because before people used the word alternative to describe Kurt Cobain and grunge bands or whatever, 90s bands, like that's what alternative was. It was bands like Joy Division, New Order, yourselves. Like I feel like something was happening and it was very exciting for me at the time.
Yeah, sure. I remember there was a moment where, and this might sound funny, but where it hit home was when we came over from England to do some dates in the States, and we got picked up by a cab driver in New York, and he was like looking back at us saying, "You guys in the band?" And we said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's the band called?" And he goes, "Say Love and Rockets." Oh, and he starts singing "So Alive," the cab driver. And we knew that that was like a signifier that things had changed because that wouldn't have happened the previous year.
Yeah. Were
We
you
didn't have a hit, but
surprised?
I mean, what the cab driver, a regular cab driver in New York would not really be able to sing one of our songs. It'd be surprising if he did.
Were you surprised by the success of that song? I mean,
Yeah.
the fact,
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
we knew
number
we
three.
knew it was a really good one when we made it. We were very excited about it. But we didn't know how far it would go, of course. But we thought it would be successful to some degree.
I'm assuming, at least for the foreseeable future, that there are no plans for more Bauhaus reunions or whatever. But the Love and Rockets one kind of got cut short last year
Yes,
with
it
the
did.
Jane's Addiction tour. So is there any, well, you can correct me if I was wrong about Bauhaus, but in general, I was meaning to ask what's going to happen with Love and Rockets because there was a whole tour you could have continued doing if things hadn't unfortunately happened on that night with Jane's.
No, I know. And we were very much into playing on that tour, so it was very jarring. Uh, And the tour we did before that, our own tour, we were really into that tour as well. We decided not to do anything this year, but next year it's quite possible. And there's a lot of interest from promoters, bookers, and the fans. And we did have a really good time when we were out on the stage. So yeah, it's entirely feasible.
Were you, did you have, were you, did you see what happened that night with David? Like, were you side stage for it, or did you kind
I
of hear
was on
about?
the side of the stage uh, until the song before that incident, and I decided to leave because
Maybe you, did you
I see
sort
it
of,
night after night, and also, to be honest, it was a bit hard to watch with the way Perry was on the stage,
mm,
not at his best, not just that night, many nights, to be honest. And so I decided to leave, and I got back to the hotel, and Daniel saw it. He was still there, and he called me and Kevin, said, "Oh, something's gone down. It's heavy." That's when I found out about it.
well, yeah, it is a shame because I had missed, that tour had done LA and I'd been out of town for that. So I was going to do the second one that you guys had scheduled. So it is unfortunate, but I did see Love and
Yeah.
Rockets at the Ace, and I also saw you guys at Cruel World, which is tomorrow, by the way. It's kind of weird to have,
Yeah.
like, every year of Cruel World, there's been some kind of, I guess, Bauhaus representation, whether it was Bauhaus themselves or it was
Yeah.
Love and Rockets or whatever. So you'll be missed tomorrow, but
Be
I'm
representation in the audience because I'm going and my brother's going. In fact, I just came back from picking up my passes, and funny enough, we pulled into the car park at exactly the same time.
oh, that's cute.
What are the chances?
I will well, I'm glad you're going to be representing in that way. I will be representing it as well. I'll take it back to this current project because I started this interview sort of talking about how it must have been very visceral and emotional for you, particularly to do the Mother Tree song.
Yes.
Are there any plans to do this album or other poems from the book in a live setting with an audience?
Yes. I've got a little tour coming up in starting in June. And then there's a break and then it resumes in July and into August. And now it's extended into September. Because I've been adding dates here and there, and now I've got people that now contacting me requesting, a gig. So that's a kind of snowballing. And that set will be about the th first third will be spoken word with pre-recorded music. I'm
Hmm.
not taking that group. The group no longer are together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Although I still play with John Bernstein and the who plays piano, and also occasionally Greg Allison, who played violin. In fact, Greg has been doing some wonderful arranging for me, uh, strings on my new album that's nearly finished.
Hmm.
Uh, some of those tracks have like a 16-piece orchestra. There's a 23-piece orchestra on one of them. Uh, the orchestra, the orchestra being Greg, multi-tracked because he plays violin, he plays viola, and he plays cello,
Oh,
and
wow.
he's a brilliant arranger.
So when is that coming out? What can you tell me about that
I
project?
don't know yet. Sometime next year, I've got a deal for it. It's going to be a double album.
Oh,
It's
wow.
quite ambitious album.
Wow. Very cool. I'm excited about that. In terms of before that, this spoken word tour, like one man
Yeah,
tour,
yeah. So with that, so it's the first third will be spoken word, and then the rest of the set will be songs, acoustic guitar. Sometimes I'll have another musician or musicians accompany me, or sometimes it will be completely solo. And that starts on June the 10th in Denver because the album comes out on June the 6th.
is there any, I don't know if you've done any of this material in front of a live audience yet, but given the fact that, you had said like you were glad you didn't have to do a second take or whatever because, it's a lot. Are you going to do the whole 22-minute?
No, I couldn't do. Like if I do that, if I ever do that, and I might do it one time and one time only, it'll be a special occasion. But I can't do that. I couldn't. No, it's too sacred. I
Mm.
can't. Um, but I'll do some pieces from that. There's a couple of pieces I can do, like. Eulogy for Beale Street. That's a good one. And maybe the Incantation to Herne. So these are pieces not about my mother.
Hmm. So there will be no mother specific pieces in this because you kind of want to keep
On
those.
this tour, no. And there's also some of the other poems in the book I've set to music already, so I'll be doing those with the pre-recorded music.
Well, I'm looking forward to, will there be an LA show for that? I will be there if so.
Yeah, yeah. Zebulon,
Oh,
my my second home, really.
I'm there
Um,
often myself. I love that place.
I was there last night with Robin Hitchcock.
Oh, I missed that, but I will definitely not miss your show there.
It's June 26th, I believe.
Cool. I will
Yeah.
be there. I will see you there. Maybe I'll see you
Come
at
and
Cruel
say
World.
hello.
Okay, maybe I'll see you at Cruel World tomorrow. I'll be the one in black. Look for me. Maybe I'll wear this shirt. But it was lovely chatting with you. Thank you for telling me so many great stories about your life and career. It was really fascinating, and this whole project is fascinating. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks. You have a wonderful day and a wonderful Cruel World.
And you.
Bye.
Bye.